Assalamu alaikum. Peace be with you. And thanks for joining me. I'm so glad that we're doing this Ramadan series. For 30 days, we're going to be looking at 30 different topics, different ways in which the Quran engages with other scriptures in dialogue and encourages Muslims to be in dialogue with people of other faiths. So these are topics that we could discuss with people over, a samosa or a chai, late at night in Ramadan, or just for iftar. Maybe there's a non-Muslim visiting either your home or the masjid, and you want to engage with them. All right. So today, let's talk about the mercy of God and His nearness. You ever wonder, is God too far? Where is God? And is He really listening to our prayers? Does He care enough about us, or is He too distant and uncaring? Where is the mercy of God? Let's look at this. Diving into the Quran, we can see that there is assurance that in the Quran that God is actually close to us. And actually, a verse dealing with fasting in Ramadan continues the discourse in Surah 2, that's Surah al-Baqarah, as you know. Verse number 185 talks about Ramadan, Shahr Ramadan, and then 186 says, وَإِذَا سَأَلَكَ عِبَادِي عَنِّي فَإِنِّي قَرِيبٌ. When my servants ask you concerning me, then I am near. أُجِيبُ دَعْوَةَ الدَّاعِي إِذَا دَعَانِ. I respond to the call of whoever is making a dua to me whenever they make a dua. فَلْيَسْتَجِيبُوا لِي. So let them respond to me, وَلْيُؤْمِنُوا بِي, and let them believe in me, لَعَلَّهُمْ يَرْشُدُونَ, so that they may be rightly guided. Now we find other passages in the Quran as well that highlight the nearness of God. Surah 50, verse number 16 says, وَنَحْنُ أَقْرَبُ إِلَيْهِ مِنْ حَبْلِ الْوَرِيدِ, and we are closer to the human being than his or her jugular vein. That means that God is right there with us. And another verse, Surah 8, verse number 24, says that Inna Allah yahulu bayna al-mar'i wa qalbi. God comes in between a person and the person's heart. So you can see that God is actually right here with us all of the time. And we can interpret that, of course, in a metaphorical way. We're not talking about proximity in terms of the measurable distance between two geographical coordinates, but we are assured that God is near. Now, when we turn to other scriptures, we find actually similar messages that God is, in fact, close at hand. In the Bible, for example, I have with me here the New Revised Standard Version of the Bible, and the Psalms, which is part of the Old Testament portion of, which is basically the Hebrew Bible, the Bible of Judaism. Christians refer to it as the Old Testament. And so in 145, Psalm 145, so this is the Psalm roughly corresponding to what we understand to be the Zabur, or the revelation given to Dawood alayhi salam, the prophet David. We find a description of God and His bountiness, His bounty, His graciousness. And then going to verse number 8, we find the Lord is gracious and merciful, slow to anger and abounding in steadfast love. The Lord is good to all. We're in verse number 9 now. And His compassion is over all that He has made. So the mercy, the compassion of God is quite stressed here. No wonder the Quran coming later, stresses the mercy and the compassion of God. From the Quran, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. That's how the Quran starts. Oh, that's the very first verse of the Quran. In the name of God, the Beneficent, the Merciful One. And as you know, Muslims are fond of referring to the names of God as al-Rahman and al-Rahim, which are intense forms of saying that God is merciful. Each one by itself is an intense way of saying that God is merciful. And you put the two together, you just double that. You make it more exponential to emphasize the mercy of God. So that's a recurring theme, the Basmala, saying Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, in the name of God, the Beneficent, the Merciful One. This is at the head of every chapter except for the 9th chapter of the Quran. So 113 times you're going through the Quran, you're reading that again and again. So that's a resonating feature of the Quran, stressing the mercy of God. And we're seeing that it's there in the Bible as well. Now, it's interesting that there is a passage in which Jesus describes God. Now we're turning to the New Testament portion of the Christian Bible, and here we find that Jesus, on whom be peace, is saying, like, love your enemies and so on, and you will have a great reward. You will be children of the Most High God. And then Jesus continues, for he is kind to the ungrateful and the wicked. Be merciful, just as your Father is merciful. So it's a curiosity, and I know many Muslims will find this very interesting, that Jesus, on whom be peace, refers to God as your Father, the Father of other people. Now, the main topic for us, of course, at the moment is that God is near and God is merciful. So all of these passages from both the Bible and the Quran is stressing the nearness of God on the one hand, and the mercy and compassion of God on the other hand. So turning to the Quran, more pointedly, we see that this is an emphasized teaching in the Quran, and because it is so emphasized, the Bismillah has stuck in the minds of Muslims, saying Bismillah al-Rahman al-Rahim. We say it, as a precursor to every good deed, and even some mundane things. One might, say Bismillah before starting one's car, for example. So in these different various ways, we are remembering God, and we're praising Him, we're reciting His beautiful names, and we are reminding ourselves that God is merciful. So how does that translate into our lives? We should now be merciful to others, starting with the people around us in our homes. Be merciful. Let us be merciful to our parents, our siblings, our children, our spouses, and let that extend over to the neighbors, to the rest of the world. Let it extend even to animals. And in fact, if we're not kind to God's creatures, how do we expect God to be kind to us? But let us mirror God's kindness to us by being kind to God's creation. And let us take a moment this Ramadan to share this message with another person, maybe at iftar, in a late night snack, or maybe on another occasion. Maybe you're at work and somebody is asking you, hey, why are you fasting? That's an opportunity for you to explain something about your faith. Talk to them about the nearness of God. And join me again tomorrow. We're going to be talking about the command be, and then it is. How does the Quran depict the creation with God just simply giving the order and the creation springs into existence? That's wonderful, isn't it? Well, let's think about that tomorrow and how it compares with what we find in other scriptures. That will be another point for dialogue between Muslims and others. So peace be with you. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Assalamu alaikum. Muslim Media Hub exists, and the show it produces, Let the Quran Speak, continues to be aired because good people like you choose to support it. Please continue to make that choice this Ramadan. Go to muslimmediahub.com. Peace be with you. Assalamu alaikum.